Annyeonghaseyo. Hi, my name's Tim Burlowski. I serve as Senior Director of Product Management at Veritas. I'm responsible for cybersecurity across the Veritas portfolio of products and services. In addition, I lead a group of product managers who work on delivering the right requirements from our customers to our engineering team. It's a pleasure to be here today with you virtually, although I admit I'd rather be there with you in person, learning about your challenges and your enterprise right there in Seoul. Maybe next time. Today we'll be talking about getting real about cyber resiliency. Let's all admit it, our data is under attack. I like to joke that your data is under attack by both malicious attackers with evil intent, as well as lawyers. When I think about that world, the lawyers are, of course, just trying to do their job, but they're trying to make sure that we've all met our legal obligations to both our customers and to governments and citizens. From the data that we get, and we sponsored a large-scale enterprise survey around the world, 65% of customers report that their enterprise has been successfully breached in a cyber event. Of those, 48% tell us they actually lost data. And I can tell you with great certainty, some of those customers have paid a ransom to the attackers and also not gotten back all of the data based on the reports we get from police and intelligence agencies. The most frustrating part of this is that it takes a lot of time to fully contain the attack. And that's not just the time it takes to restore the data, but the full time it takes to find the attack, restore the data, and return to normal operations. It can be very time-consuming. Now, when you think about the world we live in today, you have to understand that this story has only gotten more complicated. Data has grown, to be certain, but more importantly, it's everywhere. Many enterprises employ more than one cloud service provider. Many people have hundreds of data sources and hundreds of mission-critical applications. And we find that customers are using a lot of software as a service, as many as up to 130 different service offerings. Some of the complexity around this is even when you're bringing a service provider, like a cloud service provider or a software provider, it turns out data is almost always your responsibility. They may provide a platform to store it or transform it in some way for your use, but really in the end, it's your data, you created it, and frankly, you'll be the one restoring it if there's ever a problem. And this is a very complicated world. This is a world where we believe you have to consider the notion of autonomous data management, which is really the only way to overcome data complexity issues. Our vision is really to get to full autonomy, which for us means the data should be self-protected, self-secured, self-stored, self-governed. This would enable us to deploy, optimize, heal, harden our systems, all without human beings involved. And I know this sounds like science fiction, but we've already got self-driving cars in our streets. And we know there's been autonomous robots exploring Mars in conjunction with human beings for almost a decade. At the same time, in certain places, packages, meals are being delivered by little self-driving robots, which would be such a joy to see. From our perspective, the real question is, why can't this happen for data management? This journey resembles the kind of journey we've been on with cars. Originally, everything in the car was your responsibility. Steering, speed control, what temperature the car was set to, whether the fan was blowing or not. Slowly, many of those tasks became automated. You've seen things like cruise control, dynamic cruise control, indoor temperature controls where you just set a temperature and off it goes. But the world we live in of data is not that way, but the journey is very similar. We think it starts the same way. You had to do it all manually. Then you automate certain tasks. Then the system starts to present smart recommendations. Ultimately, you get that co-pilot style assistant where you can make a query in natural language, get back information that's immediately actionable, and kick off actions which are fully automated. That's the stepping stone to what we all really need, autonomous data management, where it's truly done for you without having to think about it. I'm really proud to tell you at Veritas, we're working on delivering that future today. We'll be delivering first with a natural language assistant that helps you understand what's happening in your environment, gives you easy access to data, and makes them all actionable. So if we're recommending something, there'll be a button right there to help you complete that action. This is coming first to Alta, data protection in the cloud, and you'll see it incorporated across the full product line. So let's get real about all that data I've been talking about and really get into the notion of cyber risk. When you think about the recovery time problem that I talked about earlier, you may wonder, why does it take so long? The truth is, cyber events are very different from traditional disasters, and it takes a lot longer to do all of the work needed to contain and respond to those incidents. You've got lots of different people around the table who each bring their own concerns to their table, their own deep backgrounds, and really have to understand what to do to aid and to fix this cyber attack. This could include the IT operational teams, the security team, the executives who may be wondering if they'll be personally liable for what happened, as well as those lawyers I talked about earlier. They need to know where they're contractually obligated to disclose a particular breach to their partners, as well as thinking about how to respond to government regulators and/or the customers they serve in each market. This kind of event is best avoided, and I think a strong layered defense can help prevent it, although perhaps not in every single case. So when we think about the world we're living in today, it's really no longer the world of a simple encryption or wiper-based attack, where you could simply go to the backup copy and restore the data and be sure that you had really recovered. Now it's really double extortion, where the data is encrypted or wiped and also exfiltrated. What that means to you is having a great inventory of where your critical data is housed and exactly what kind of critical data you have is crucial. And of course, the best practice is to know that well before an attack actually happens. Now, if you're doing all of that well, you'll also have user behavior monitoring happening to alert you to any unusual activities which need to be investigated further to make sure they're not an early indicator of an attack. Now, if we think about the evolution of these attacks, there's also that story of what needs to happen after attack. Forensics to understand what happened and when did it happen. When was the data last in its pristine, clean state? Making sure that the data that is recovered is fully clean, as well as restoring operations with your security teams and your data protection teams. It's our belief that the world of data governance, data security, and data protection all belong together, and these disciplines must come together in a holistic way. We believe we have the right solutions at Veritas to do that in our 360 defense posture. When we think about 360 defense, which really requires multiple disciplines to come together, we think it's key to think holistically, meaning what you need to do before attack, during attack, and after an attack to ensure that you have the quickest possible recovery experience available. First of all, there's that data security posture management I talked about. Where is your data? What kind of data is it? Is it sensitive data that is classified in some way, that it is confidential? Perhaps it's personally identifying data that relates to healthcare records or national records. All of this information needs to be understood so that in the event of an attack, you can notify the right people. That kind of approach is something we offer through our products like Data Insight and also IT Analytics. Combining that with multi-layered immutability and the easy ability to send data to offsite storage with special controls to ensure that even in the case of credential theft, that data can't be compromised is so important. And we're very proud to offer Recovery Vault to give you easy access to storage that is a cyber secure vaulted copy that will be there when you absolutely need it. Of course, we strengthen your cyber defenses by making sure you're aware of anomalous activity. This anomalous activity could include administrator actions as well as data anomalies, which could be early indicators of an attack. As you see that, we offer real malware detection, which allows you to check your data that's backed up and ensure there's no malware in that data so that you don't accidentally ever reinfect yourself. And of course, that gives you ultimate threat protection. The key for us then is to offer you orchestrated recovery, allowing you to scale recovery processes to recover large multi-tier applications with all of the dependencies with great confidence because they've been tested and rehearsed over and over again. And we believe that's what makes Veritas unique. Now, in that unique world, we want to be very clear. We don't do everything ourselves. We bring in specialized security partners that we both interoperate with as well as integrate with to ensure you can have a great outcome. You see a number of partners that we utilize for identity management, privileged access management, Active Directory protection, encryption and key management, malware detection, SIM/SOAR activities. Each of these vendors providing a unique piece of the puzzle to ensure that the security operations teams, as well as the IT operations teams, see the same picture and can produce a tremendous outcome for your end users. But the key is you have to marry the capabilities of a secured infrastructure offering like NetBackup, along with those key interoperation and integration with the security ecosystem in the context of a fully tested, certified product with cyber readiness at the core. Now, when we think about that, we'll tell you in a moment about our Red Lab. That's a way we test ourselves against the worst malware and ransomware the internet has to offer. But that's not the only way we test ourselves. We use independent testing authorities, certifying figures, as well as the frameworks provided by governments around the world to ensure that we've hardened our software in the right way, providing you the right feature functionality. And whether your workloads are on premises in a traditional data center, deployed as a private cloud, off premises, deployed as a SaaS infrastructure or cloud infrastructure, we've got you covered with one of the largest sets of workload coverage that anyone offers on the planet. We're very excited about how we deliver that on any infrastructure in the multi-cloud, leveraging security departments, and tested and tried at enterprise scale by some of the largest entities and enterprises on this planet. Let me tell you a little bit more about the Red Lab. The Red Lab is an isolated lab at Veritas. When I say isolated, it means you can't get there from our production network. It's completely air-gapped. and there's no access to the internet. That means that any software needs to be hand carried in there, and you can't take your laptop in there either. Why is that? Well, this is where we test ourselves in a cage match against the worst software that the attackers have developed that we have access to. This injection of live malware and live ransomware enabled us to do first-party research and understand how these things affect operating systems, platforms, and even our own infrastructure. This allows us to provide a hardened ecosystem that you can feel confident in because we've tested and tested and tested. And as we learn, as we find issues, we solve them and deliver them quickly to you as plugins. And these plugins could detect new behaviors that we've seen in malware in the wild. It could be something that detects unusual administrative events that we've noticed in the wild. These allow us to make sure that your infrastructure will be available for recovery when you need it critically. Why is this important? Well, Veritas has been dealing with normal disasters for decades. And that means something as simple as a server that went down due to a bad power supply, or perhaps a data center that was flooded due to weather. These are all incidents we've been dealing with for a very long time and quite successfully. In fact, one time I visited a customer and I was expecting 5 different employees of this customer to join me. Only 3 of them were available, and I asked where the other 2 were. They said, oh, they're in a city about 150 miles away. That city had a terrible flood and the data center was flooded, so they're engaging with restore operations. I said, well, if there's a major restore of a data center going on, why aren't you helping them? Why are you here talking to me? And they said, well, this is an everyday thing. We've been drilling for this. We know exactly what to do. And I'm happy to tell you that backup's working perfectly. So we're more than happy to talk to you because it's just another day at the office. Now, let me assure you, cyber attacks are very different. The impact and complexity is very different when you can no longer trust your infrastructure that you've thought was so safe. These are malicious incidents. And I will tell you, we have strong evidence that the backup platform is a first kind of place that the attackers will target. This is a very different world we live in. I'll walk you through a couple of different attacks that we've seen in our customer support. I will tell you that both attacks featured Veritas restoring 100% of the data to those entities. This included a petroleum producer as well as a research hospital. First, let's talk about the oil and gas producer. This particular oil and gas producer does everything from the wells themselves all the way through refining and delivering the same gasoline at the pump with the little convenience store where you can buy your donuts. When they were down, it was headline news. Why? Truck drivers couldn't pay for their gas. They couldn't buy the donuts. They couldn't get the coffee they were looking for. This was a very serious outage for them to withstand. What did we learn? Well, first of all, this was a credential theft. As best as we can understand, they stole key credentials of administrative employees and used that to move laterally within the organization. This was not just a few high school hackers doing something on a lark. This was a nation-state attack that had been planned and carefully executed. What were the learnings? Well, I'll tell you what, this particular company had been practicing with the security team and the infrastructure team for months. They knew exactly what each other had planned to do and the best way to work together to begin recovery. They had already deployed immutable storage, which made it very easy to know that the data would be available to them when they needed it most. I'll tell you, they still wish that they knew more about what data was stored where in that corporation to have sped up the recovery of that data. The second story I'll tell you about is a cancer research hospital. This cancer research hospital was again victim of credential theft. That means while the attackers may have used phishing attempts or other approaches to gain the initial credentials, once they had access to the network, they then moved laterally and compromised more credentials. They weren't really using traditional attacks of using software vulnerabilities. They were simply using built-in commands to move around the network and harvest passwords. This customer uses two different backup systems, one from Veritas and one from a competitor. Now, I will tell you the competitor did not fare nearly as well as Veritas. When I interviewed the customer, they had completed 100% of their restores with Veritas and gotten back all of the data. They were still in the process of trying to get the data back from the competitor. It just goes to show you, you can simplify your environment if you standardize on a single vendor. That allows you to have consistency of procedure, which is especially helpful when you're going through a mass recovery event. This customer learned that it's very important to test the recovery process so that you can be sure everything can be restored properly. When they were reviewing the results of the software from a competitor, they found that they just simply had not tested and did not have nearly the confidence in their restore capabilities. As I said before, one of the key learnings was be proactive and understand where sensitive data is located. They didn't have a perfect map either. This was especially complicated as this particular hospital does both patients as well as research. So they had data which served the nurses and doctors as well as the scientists who are trying to cure cancer. But let's just think about those last two words, curing cancer, a goal that we all think is urgent and important in this world. That was interrupted after this attack, meaning they had to clean the systems. They had to do forensics. They had key applications offline. That's an interruption to actual care of patients. It's a terrible world we live in, but that's the world where we must prepare for nation-state attacks with the intent to do harm that are persistent and difficult to defend against. When you think about this world, the key is making sure your enterprise is resilient and able to withstand these attacks, even if the attackers have full administrative access to your systems. So when we think about this world, we think about simplifying the complicated act of a cyber recovery. And we're building out a new world-class interface to make this easier than it's ever been, offering you anomaly detections, automated malware scans, vulnerability scanning, sensitive data identification and classification, and also those important API-led integrations with our security partners. This, we believe, will make a tremendous difference in your ability to recover data quickly. So let's talk about Veritas. We believe we offer 76% lower TCO than the competition. We believe you can protect all of your data, no matter where it is, be it on cloud or on premises. And we believe we can do it at scale at a lower cost than the competition. We support more workloads. We have a simpler deploy zero trust architecture and a strong methodology of ensuring that we are offering a secure by design, secure by default software with the right capabilities to isolate your data so that it's always available when you need it for real-time recovery, and you can do the malware detection prior to bringing that data back online so you'll never reinfect yourselves. Lastly, we believe we can reduce false positives. By doing that data discovery and mapping before an event happens, we can make sure that we're collecting the right data from the right sources and doing the right surveillance of risky users so that you can understand the total picture of your environment and govern your data well. Thanks again for joining us today. It's been great talking to you, and thank you for your time. Goodbye. 감사합니다.